Someone's on the net?
Dumbass. I use gel.
You've got mail.
Oh, shit. A Tamagotchi just drilled through a chick's head.
Come on, we gotta go.
Hey everyone, welcome to this awesome interview. And I'm going to say that ahead of time because these two people are awesome people. I know it's going to be an awesome interview here with the writers and director of this new film, Y2K, that is out here. Personally speaking, one of my favorite people ever to grace an SNL stage in Kyle Mooney, and a fantastic up-and-coming writer, I would say, and Evan Winter here. Hello, gentlemen, and welcome to the Outlaw Nation.
Hey, John, that's very sweet of you to say. I really appreciate that.
I
Agree with you. No, that's not how
I should caress your face as I say that, Kyle. I feel the need to do that. I saw the film last night, had a lot of fun watching this film. I grew up during that time. Remember when Y2K happened? Tell me, how long have you guys been working on this film, and what inspired you all to make it now?
Well, I mean, this is the era that Evan and I grew up in. I was a freshman in high school. Evan was in 8th grade. So, like, it is one of those things. If I feel like felt right to revisit our childhood, essentially. And it's an era you've not seen a ton of on screen.
Right.
So it felt sort of ripe to be reintroduced. But yeah, I think Y2K was such a massive letdown. And so speaking for myself, I was a little obsessed. I've been obsessed with it since it happened or didn't happen, if you will.
Right.
So one day in 2019, New Year's Day, I kind of had this small seed of an idea of like, oh, there should be a movie about teenagers going to a high school party, and Y2K actually happens. I texted Evan, and now we're here, essentially.
And Evan, what was it like when you got this idea, and when did the turn in the movie come about as you guys were writing it, this idea that it becomes them escaping these technological gadgets gone wild?
Yeah, well, yeah, I woke up. We'd gone out or went to a party at Kyle's house on New Year's Eve.
It was an Airbnb.
At an Airbnb on New Year's Eve. And so I woke up pretty hungover, read the text, and was kind of, well, it's a good idea, and then passed out for a bit. And then we started texting about it and throwing pitches back and forth. I want to say maybe the 5th text, like day one, when we were talking about it, we landed on that, like, this is going to be a very sci-fi disastery kind of Y2K experience, not like a realistic thing.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it was just so much fun to kind of build it together. And I think after a couple weeks, most of the major through lines were there, and just kind of got to writing pages, sending pages back and forth. And after about a year, we had a script that was not very far off from what you saw on screen.
Well, what movies inspired you guys to make this one? Because obviously there's a commentary about man versus technology and what it can do. The idea of assimilating nowadays, the idea of having a chip put into your brain to make you think a certain way. I mean, there's a lot of messages that are working on a number of levels. What movies inspired you all to kind of revisit as you were writing the script during the process?
Well, it's fun. I mean, like, it's like there are almost 2-3 halves of this movie, right? Where we start out in this sort of teenage coming of age type film, and we were really excited with making it feel just like that, so that if you don't know anything about the movie, you go in there thinking like, oh, this is what the whole movie is going to be, and then it takes a full turn.
Right.
But like one of the awesome things about this era, around late 90s into the early 2000s, is like there was an onslaught of these teen comedy movies. So we got to really draw from those, and that's like Your She's All That, Can't Hardly Wait, American Pie,
10 Things I Hate About You. Yeah.
Right.
What was the Adrian Grenier?
Well, there's You Drive Me Crazy.
Drive Me Crazy.
Yeah.
Takes.
Yeah. So it's a really funny era that, like, there's almost this revival of the teen movie, and they're a little bit raunchier, and they're kind of like sex comedies, but like most of them are PG-13 and a little bit safe, but they feel like, when especially us were a little bit younger, it felt like this is what being a teenager and being in high school is like.
Right.
So we were, psyched to draw from those.
Yeah, and am I wrong to read this movie as a love letter to the late 90s and how we had so many there's a great sequence in the movie which as someone who lived through the 90s, like I remember the in many different insane groups of people in the different schools and the different kinds of musical styles that were mixing over. I mean, the swing with the grunge with the like all the stuff that's throughout. Then you throw in the surprise person who shows up, the lead singer of a certain band. I don't know if I can give it away, but am I wrong to read it that way? Because I found myself smiling and I put on my 90s mix on the drive home.
Absolutely it is. Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, again, this is where when we grew up. So like we have a very special place in our hearts for this era. And like I don't know that I can articulate this incredibly well, but like it's fascinating because like as a teenager during this time,
Yeah.
pop culture was so ubiquitous in a way. It was like we were MTV, we were coming home
Yeah.
from school, watching Total Request Live with Carson Daly, seeing the hottest new music videos. And yeah, it's definitely a love letter to the era. And we tried to be as accurate as we could to what our life was
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the stuff that happens in the movie did not happen to us, but up to a certain point.
The clicks and
Yeah.
like I think it was that period, the late 90s was kind of the last era where there were these like monolithic, almost like monoculture. There are these huge things in pop culture that everyone is aware of, even if you are not a fan of. And simultaneously, technology exists on a level where like there was a computer room, like you went to the room to get on the internet, and then when you're done, you left, and you kind of like left most of technology and the internet behind. And so it does feel like a pretty big jump from that period, looking back on it with what the world is now, where like
Yeah.
you can be into like a very specific culture and be not really aware of any other kind of culture. You can like fully disappear into that, and you're just always surrounded by and connected to the internet and technology now.
Yeah, I know. It seems like back then, and certainly the movie highlights this, the pop culture was, you were exposed to all these different things, which was cool and interesting to explore. And it was much more open about, oh, this could be interesting. Like more of an accepting vibe. And nowadays it seems it's much more of a separating vibe as opposed to exposing people to different things. So I found that there was a very sweet nostalgia in that I had forgotten about. And it was great to be reminded about that in the movie. But another thing that's really great about this film, what a cast you put together. Talk to me about the casting process on this. You got so many up and coming actors or actors who are currently in their prime, like Rachel Zegler, Jaeden Martell, Julian Dennison, Mason Gooding, Eduardo Franco, who I loved on Stranger Things. And then you've got the kid Leroy up in here. And then you've got veterans like Alicia Silverstone and Tim Heidecker. This must feel a little bit of a nice confirmation that you've written a great script here or a fun script here that so many talented people want to be a part of it.
Oh, that's very sweet. Yeah, I mean, like, somebody once told me this years ago when I was working on a movie that like you work on these things and you go into casting, you're trying to find the right people to make this thing happen. And some people will drop out, some people won't come out for it, whatever, but like the group you end up with is the group you were supposed to end up with and is the perfect group. And like we are so lucky because everybody we have like took these characters that we fell in love with in the writing process that meant so much to us and are pieces of us, and they elevated them and brought something truly amazing that like watching it go down, seeing these people bring these words to life was really something special.
Yeah.
Some of these folks we didn't know until we went through the casting process and auditioned, some of the young actors.
Oh, wow.
And they're not necessarily easy roles to take on either because they weren't alive, and who knows what like a underground hip hop head acts like in like the year 2000 or something like that.
Right.
So yeah, we couldn't be happier.
Yeah, we have to shout out Jess Kelly, our casting director, because she brought a lot of these actors to our attention and did such a great job kind of rounding out the ensemble.
Who wrote the raps? Tell the truth. Who wrote the raps on these? Who wrote the educated raps? Those, I mean,
we're both underground hip hop heads as in this era as teenagers. So
Yeah.
I would say it was definitely a collab, and I'll give Kyle like 65%, and I'll take
Yeah, I was in a hip hop group in high school called Instruments of Intelligence. I will say the name of the group that CJ, our character, is in is
Yeah.
called Prophets of Intelligence. So
Yeah.
not very far off.
an Easter egg for
Yeah.
6 people.
Yes.
like
Well,
that.
the dude who was in my rap group with me was at the screening last night, and he was like, "Prophets of Intelligence."
Thanks. Kyle, your character of Garrett is one of the funniest people in the movie. Who was he inspired by? And Evan, did you ever rent from someone like Garrett?
We'll say, I grew up in Oregon around some kids like that, the kind of happy-go-lucky white dudes with dreads who I have a lot of affinity for. So I think the starting point for the character was probably like, we need to find a way to bring Kyle into the movie.
Yeah.
And he's not going to play like a high schooler. So that guy as like a video store clerk really felt right. But then Kyle did so much work creating that character and making all the little intricacies and the ticks to make him who he was. So,
Yeah, it was a lot of just watching like dudes go to Fish concerts in 2001 or something like that on YouTube. And then pulling from like people I knew as well. Like there's one dreaded dude I just have such an iconic memory of, and the way he danced at some club I was at in the early 2000s, that it was very easy to access Garrett by just thinking of this dude whose name I almost want to say, but I feel bad. I don't want to blow up his spot.
I thought you nailed it. It was nice to be reminded of why Kyle Mooney is one of my favorite SNL people for
That's
9
really
years.
nice.
Honestly,
That means a lot.
that little extra smile thing was genius. One last question. Talk to me about selecting the music for this one. As I mentioned earlier, I put on my 90s mix. It was great to hear Semisonic. It was great to hear Harvey Danger. There was some really good tracks in here. Is there a song or two that you wanted that you couldn't quite get? Because I know you spoke in previous interviews that Junior was what you could get for the movie. What about the song-wise? Were there any songs that you really wanted to get, or did you get the songs you were hoping to get for this movie?
We definitely had from I think the first draft of the script, we had a song listed in every moment. We should start by saying we're incredibly happy with where we ended up. But yeah, there were some that were in the edit that we just ultimately couldn't afford.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to throw any people under the bus, but there are some rich people who don't like jokes.
All right, well, Kyle Mooney, Evan Winter, thank you so much for taking the time. Y2K is out in theaters. This is one you all should definitely enjoy, especially if you're a 90s kid or early 2000s kid. This one's really going to work for you. A lot of comedy here and some messages going on underneath all of it that I thought was fun to see as well. Thank you, gentlemen, for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, John. This was a treat. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for watching this video. Please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more content from the Outlaw Nation.